So everyone has a copy? Yes? All right, so let's start at the back and then move our way to the front. So I did number the pages, so I guess it would be page number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Page 5 or the third page. Page 5 or the third page. Yeah. So, week 1, we're going to talk about race as a determinant of inequity, which means that we'll talk about this idea of equity and inequity. So, what is equity? What is inequity? We'll watch a film called Grace, the Power of an Illusion, and we'll allude to that a little bit later. So, what my plan is to do an activity on Monday and Wednesday, and then Tuesday and Thursday are reflection opportunities, and then Fridays we do some demonstration stuff, right? So that's the rhythm I'm trying to establish with the class. So obviously today we'll do the welcome, the syllabus. We'll talk about barriers to learning and that kind of stuff. Tomorrow we'll do crash course in history pieces. I think it's extremely important. So I think it's important to understand history as it relates to the context that history creates, right? So how many people were familiar with how many people knew about the colony at Jamestown? Raise your hand, right? How many people were familiar with how or why it was set up, or can remember why it's set up, right? So the context of history is also just as important as the history that gets told itself. So knowing that the Virginia Company and the Plymouth Company set up these colonies gives us an idea as to how these disaffected people were actually able to come to the New World. So Thursday, we'll watch the Power of Illusion. Friday, we'll have film discussion and do some definitions and whatnot. On Friday, you will have an assignment that is due that will be your racial biography, and that's in your syllabus. What I'm looking for in your racial biography, autobiography, will be due on Friday. All right. Let's flip the page. On the back of that are some resources around cognitive dissonance and things that we'll talk about in class. So there's some resources there for you. The film series is noted there on YouTube. I have to double check and make sure that all of those links work, because sometimes YouTube shifts stuff or people's accounts get deleted, whatnot. So week 2, talking about cultural groups. We'll watch a film called Welcome to Shelbyville. Has anyone seen that film? Okay. So what did you think?
It's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on in that film. So we'll watch that. I'll also have you do the Harvard implicit bias test. And I may assign that for you to do on Friday and have ready to go on that next Monday. And it's a simple test. You just go to, you can Google Harvard implicit bias test, register for their experiment, their scientific data collection, and then you take the one on race, and that's the one that we'll focus on. It's the one on race, but we'll talk more about that probably on Friday. Tuesday, we'll talk about cultural groups, and we'll talk about this idea of context and the importance of context. Wednesday, we'll talk about Indian boarding schools and the importance of understanding that, particularly here. And why is understanding Native American or American Indian boarding schools important here? Why is that important here? Where are we? We're in Minnesota. Why is Minnesota important to understand Native American boarding schools? Because of the population of Native Americans in the area. Even more profound. Where? Go ahead.
Were the boarding schools here?
Were the boarding schools here? They were here in the state of Minnesota,
Yeah.
not on this particular
No, yeah.
piece. But where are we? What's that?
United States.
We're in the United States. We are on native land. The English did not come up with the great name of Minnesota. That's a native word, right? So we have to recognize native history as a part of everything that we do here. And then we'll on the 14th we'll do a simulation, which I would encourage you to think about even with your classes, or asking the teachers that you'll be working with, or that will be mentoring you, if this is something you can do with your class. So I want to give you tools that you can do with your students as well. And then on the 15th, we'll have an out-of-class assignment, and I'm trying to get some tickets to the Science Museum for their race exhibit. Has anyone been to that yet? Have you heard about it? No? Okay. So the Science Museum has this exhibit on race, and I'd like for us to get there. I'm trying to get tickets, so we'll see how that works. And if that doesn't work, then I'll give you an alternative assignment, but we will not be meeting on the 15th. All right, we won't be meeting in this classroom on the 15th. If you turn to the next page. So we'll talk about race, the fulcrum for inequity. And a lot of times when we talk about this idea of inequity, race and culture and ethnicity all get kind of merged into this big amorphous clump, and that becomes a determinant of inequity. And so there are a couple of films that we'll watch. One is White Like Me, featuring Tim Wise. Has anyone seen that film? Have you seen that? Okay. The second is MTV's White People. Has anyone seen that? Okay. What did you think, Sarah?
I thought it was really interesting. I haven't seen, I only saw part of it in one of my other classes.
Okay.
But it was really interesting.
Okay. Yeah. So we'll watch that whole piece, and then we'll talk about this idea of a racial identity model, how racial identity develops, and then how we can, as teachers, kind of shortcut some of that racial identity model, or help things along. Thursday, we'll do a simulation, and we'll talk about this idea of the achievement gap. On the 22nd, we'll talk about what is the matter, and we'll deal with some community learning events. So we'll try to get out into the community and do some things, but we can talk about that. Sunday the 23rd, I have to remember if I put that in the rest of the syllabus. But on the 23rd, we'll have a community, a faith-based learning event, and it will be at the Holy, yes, sir.
So that's on Sunday?
That's on Sunday.
Okay.
That will be on a Sunday. So you see that right there, 23rd Sunday?
So it's the 24th then, right?
So the Sunday's the 24th?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because that'll be a Saturday. I'm sorry, I apologize. If you can make that correction, thank you so much for bringing that to light, Tyler. Yep, so it is Sunday, the 24th. And I'll give you more information about that probably tomorrow, as I solidify that piece. And then week 4, sorry. We'll talk about building equitable systems. So how do you, yes,
I
ma'am.
thought we only have class till Wednesday.
Okay, then I went for I was going for the whole kit and caboodle. So, yeah, so then I'll back it up. Then you just made it harder for us, Grace. Thank you. I appreciate it. So I'll make a correction on this. Then Wednesday we're done, which means that I have to back some stuff up. So I'll make some corrections and let you know what those corrections are. All right. Cool. Thank you so much for that. I appreciate it. So for the most part, the assignments are in gray. At the bottom, the things that you're responsible for are in gray. I'm going to ask that you do a weekly journal. On the next page is your weekly reflection paper, what I'm looking for, and some prompt questions. What new learning did you have this week? What did you find to be profound? What caused cognitive dissonance for you? And what is cognitive dissonance? Okay, cool. So, la 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 la. How's that sound? It's fine, pretty good. Yeah. Thought it was excellent myself, but right? So that was most people sing like the melodies of the song, right? So that would be kind of like the easy flowing. What about this? Right? That's cognitive dissonance given the first thing that you heard, right? So cognitive dissonance is that space between how you thought things were and how you might find them now, right? So there's some distance between that, and it's kind of disruptive because it doesn't line up with what it's supposed to be. But that's a whole other thing that we'll talk about. All right. Outside of me fixing those dates, any particular questions? Everything else in the front of this is pretty straightforward. The other thing that I wanted you to do is I'd like for you, so since you have 4 reflection papers, what I'd like for you to do is when you either write them or submit them, and I'll let you know tomorrow if I can get the Moodle up. You can submit them through Moodle. But I want you to grade yourself given this rubric before I grade you. All right? So I want you to grade yourself on the rubric that's below when you submit your paper. How do you think you did each of those things given the prompts, and rate yourself. All right? Cool. Das ist cool. Any other? Yes, ma'am. They'll just be short answers based on lectures. Yep. So short answers, nothing. My job is not to trick you or to scare you or to keep you in fear. So I will never give you anything that we've not covered or talked about. All right. Any other questions? Cool. Yes.
It says this portion about reading assignments, are those just different?
There'll be things that we'll do right here in class, right together. Yes.
When we have like maybe learning events on Fridays, could those be at any time on Friday, or will they be like limited to the morning class time? Or?
No. They can be any time on Friday when we do those. Yep.
So
Yep.
will we be meeting?
I'll tell you tomorrow. I've tried to line up some stuff, so I'll tell you tomorrow if we'll be meeting on those Fridays. Yep. Yes.
So does that mean, do we still have class on Fridays then? During those activities?
Yeah. If we're doing community learning events on Fridays, then we won't have class.
Oh, yeah, like, let us know.
I'll let you know tomorrow.
Right.
I'll let you know tomorrow. I've got calls out, so I'm waiting for them come back. So cool. There's one other thing that's in the syllabus, but we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it tomorrow because I'll give you more clarity on that stuff tomorrow. So let's go back to your 5 circles just for a second, because I'm really curious about something. So I've done this particular thing with all sorts of groups, and it's very interesting to me that they come up with similar things, right? So I want to check another hypothesis that I have about your 5 circles. Please raise your hand if one of your 5 circles had something to do with your race or ethnicity. Did you write down something specifically that you would like put on an application form or your FAFSA that has something to do with your race? Please raise your hand if you did that. Okay. Please raise your hand if you had something specifically that you wrote down on your paper that had something to do with your gender. That would specifically deal with your gender. Okay, so nobody raised their hand for that either. All right. So for this one, what I want you to do is I want you to jump around, wave your hands in the air like you don't care if you can say yes. All right. Did anyone put anything about their socioeconomic status? Upper class, middle class, lower class. Anybody put that kind of stuff on there? Interesting. That's interesting that nobody put their race, nobody put their gender, and no one put their socioeconomic status. Why might I find that interesting? Why is that interesting? Yes.
In
Hannah.
society, that's how we separate people by socioeconomic status, by gender, by race. But in this exercise, that's not what we put down as what we value.
Yeah. And you know what's really interesting? And all the times that I've done this, it's been very few times that people have put those things down. Why do you think that is? Why did we not put our race? Why do we not put our gender? Why do we not put our socioeconomic status as things that we value? Why? Maria, why?
Is that not what you asked of us?
What did I ask of you?
You asked for us, I guess, I don't know about everyone else, but I took it as kind of like what we value, like personally, like morals and stuff like that, not how the society defines it as.
Mario, you are so smart. What did I ask you to do? Write down things that you value. So Mario is absolutely correct. Those are things that we value. But I will tell you that there are things that we value that the world outside of us values different stuff. I find it interesting that how does the world describe President Barack Hussein Obama? When they look at him, what do they say about what is his ethnicity? What racial category does he fit in? What do they say? Black president. They say he's black president. That's the black president. That's what they say. But is that the sum total of his existence? No. He is the product of a white woman from Kansas and a black man from Kenya. They got together and they Obama'd. So as much as he is black, he is also biracial. And as much as he is black and as much as he is biracial, he is also white. Can you imagine President Obama walking around saying, I am a white man? It's hard enough to believe for some folks that he was born, but that's a whole nother conversation. There's a whole nother conversation, right? So society puts expectations on folks that aren't necessarily who they are or who they think that they are, right? And so sometimes there are limitations that folks have that we have to address, we have to talk about, all right? So there is that. So let's keep on rolling. So some of you may know or notice, double check the time, that you'll see I'll be passing out a lot of stuff, and some of it has my face on it because it comes from my private business stuff. And when you run your own business, you want it too. And yes, it looked very different throughout my life. And in about 15 minutes, can we take a break? About 15 minutes, take a break, and then we can refresh ourselves and be ready to rock and roll. So there are 4 truths about human beings, and this will be on a quiz or a test or whatnot. So I want you to pay attention to these pieces. So there are 4 truths about humans and human behavior. The first is that human beings can learn, change, and grow. If it were not so, I would have told you. No. So human beings can learn, change, and grow. We're in this business because what? We're in the business of education because what? Because we believe that human beings can learn, change, and grow. When we stop believing that, it is time for us to retire. Okay? Now, here's the trick about this idea of human beings learning, changing, and growing. This can happen even without evidence of it being so. Example. When I was a kid, particularly around 6th grade, and I don't know why 6th grade this happens, but I used to walk and drag my feet. I would shuffle my feet. And I don't even know how I did it, but I did it. So I walked like this. And this is before sagging, so I didn't have any excuse, right? You know, here's me walking. You ever seen sagging? Yeah, okay. So I would drag my feet, and my parents would put me on punishment. They disciplined me for dragging my feet, because when you drag your feet, you also drag the back of your pants, so you end up burning out the back of your pants. So not only were they buying new shoes quicker than they wanted to, they were also buying new pants, right? So I did that, and now it was very interesting to me that, you know, you fast forward. When I bought my shoes and I bought my pants, for some reason, I didn't drag my feet. So people can learn, change, and grow even when we don't have evidence of it, if we don't see it. So another example. So I'm on the board of the Boy Scouts, and we just had our annual conference. Kind of board of directors meeting and, you know, state of the Boy Scouts and whatnot. And there was a young man who they awarded the highest level of award for acts of valor. And this young man has autism. He's on the spectrum, and he's kind of medium to kind of low on the spectrum in that he doesn't communicate a whole lot, doesn't say a whole lot. And so he participated with the Boy Scouts, but they weren't sure if anything was going in. And so he's coming home from school, and he goes to a special school. They're in a special van and whatnot. And the driver slumps over the steering wheel, and the van, crashes, amazingly so, gently crashes into this pole. And so all the kids are all special needs, and he's the only person. And so this young man, who was a Boy Scout, who was attending all of these meetings, going to all of these trainings, participating in all of this stuff, but they didn't ever think anything was going in, gets on the radio, and because he has heard the driver on the radio before, he calls and says, Van 77, I'm making up a number, I don't remember what it was. Van 77, distress. And he sets the thing down, he pulls the man out of the van, and he starts doing CPR that he learned in Boy Scouts. Now they don't know if he's getting this stuff, but he's called Mayday. He's doing CPR on this man. And when the emergency crew comes, I'm getting chills just thinking about the story. When the emergency crew comes, they have to pull him off because he says, I'm not done, I haven't brought him back. Because in his mind, everything that he learned should be working at this point. The man ends up passing, but that young boy did everything that he knew to do, even though other people didn't know if it was working. So we don't ever know with our students which time is going to come through for them. We don't know if this is the time that they're going to get it. And it's easy. And we've had people in our lives who've given up on us about a thing. And then we've grown up, or we've been raised up to prove them wrong, right? So all human beings can learn, change, and grow. Next, people do what they think works, even when what? Even when it doesn't work. People do what they think works, even when it doesn't work. And why do they think that it works, even though it's not producing fruit? Why do they think it works, even though it's not working, it's not producing any fruit? You ever seen a kid fall out in one of the stores, be it, Target or Cub or whatever? Anybody seen those fallouts, those tantrums, right? Why are the kids throwing, how many of you threw tantrums in one of those stores? Why are kids throwing tantrums? So they think it will help them get their own way. But why do they think that particular set of behaviors will help them get their way? Because it's worked in the past. And the kid is saying, if it's worked in the past, and this is a similar situation, shouldn't it work now? And what do you think if the kid, if it's worked in the past and they think it's going to work now, what do you think about how do they think about their future behavior? I'm going to do it into the future as well. So when will the kids' behavior change? It's already not working. So they're still exhibiting the behavior, because have you seen parents say, okay, Johnny, here you go. Oh, you've seen, okay. Shannon's like, yup. Mm-hmm. Or to get them to stop making. And so is that kid going to continue that behavior? Yeah. He'll be 45, still, throwing tantrums, oh! Right? But when the parent is made up in their mind, we're not going to do that, The kid still keeps doing it, and sometimes they even escalate their behavior. And I can say, Johnny, you're not going to get that sucker. I can say that till I'm blue in the face. And Johnny will still keep acting a fool until when?
He gets tired.
Until he gets tired. Until he realizes I'm serious. Now, this is something that people get this kind of mixed up, right? I want to tell you, students will haze you. Are you guys familiar with the concept of hazing, right? So usually it's, fraternities or secret societies or whatever. Kids want you to be a part of their secret society, but they'll haze you first. They won't necessarily respect you first. They'll make you jump through some hoops to show them that you really care about them. Because once you've jumped through their hoops or whatnot, and you can show them on a consistent basis that you care about them, you got a friend for life. Andre, I was going to hit her, but I thought about what you said, and I said, what would Andre think about me if I popped her in her eye like I wanted to? All her motivations weren't quite where they needed to be, but I'll take that, right? I'll take it, right? And so people do what they think works, even when it doesn't work, because it's worked in the past. Mr. Adrian Peterson got caught up in this last year. Mr. Adrian Peterson had to take a year off from work because of this particular concept. And why did Mr. Peterson have to take off a year from work? The football player, the Vikings, who apparently did pretty well at the last game, right? Yeah. Why do you have to take off time from work? Yes, ma'am. Your hand was up. Okay, so he was accused of hitting his kid with the switch. Is that what people heard? Yeah, so he was accused of that, and some people will call that beating his child, or where I come from, people will just call it a whooping. I don't know how you spell that, but they would just, you got to whoop it, right? So he got in trouble for that. But what was his defense? What did he say? He was a very articulate and intelligent man. What was his defense for what he did to his child? Yes, sir.
He grew up in Texas, and that's what his dad did to him.
He said, that's what my dad did to me. So I did it to my son. What's the problem? What's the challenge?
Breaking out of the norm.
Breaking out of the norm? Yes, ma'am. What worked back then is not applicable now. What worked back then is not applicable now. What has changed? The context has changed. And so with the second idea, people do what they think works even when it doesn't, because they don't realize that the context has changed. And our popular culture does a really bad job of educating our kids, because they tell our kids, be you. Keep it real. Do what you feel. YOLO! I don't know if you still say YOLO. No, okay, sorry. I'm over 40, I just found out that you can toss shade. And that you need to be on fleek. I'm not exactly sure how you fit on it, but anyway. Right? So context changed. And people typically fail to realize that. Next is that all human behavior is goal-directed. All human behavior is goal-directed. And so as a teacher in a classroom, as a friend to someone, if I understand their goals, then I understand what? I understand them. I understand them. My parents used to say, my grandparents used to say, birds of a feather flock together. I never really understood that because they would use all these animal analogies and that kind of stuff. But birds of a feather flock together. And what that ended up meaning to me is that if you have similar goals, you'll be going in similar directions, and the people who are around you look like you. And I'm not talking about necessarily physical characteristics, but they will have the same attitudes and mindsets that you do. And so if you want to know your future, look at your friends. What are your friends doing? Who are they hanging out with? What do they think? How do they interact with the world? And then lastly, an attitude is a reaction to a goal. What have you been taught about an attitude? What is an attitude, and how many of you have attitudes right now? What's an attitude?
Like a mindset.
It's like a mindset, an attitude. What if adults told you as you were coming up about your attitude? What'd they say? Yes.
My parents would say like, or like to me and my siblings, you need an attitude adjustment.
Anybody ever heard something like that? You need an attitude adjustment, or you need to fix your attitude. What were they talking about? What were they talking about?
Like change your perspective on the scenario,
Okay,
or
so
change how you're thinking and behaving.
okay, so change how you're thinking and behaving. My parents would say, so first of all, my parents vowed to raise us differently than how they were raised. And then when that didn't work, they went back to what they knew, which was yelling and screaming. And my parents would say goofy stuff. Like my dad would say, boy, you better fix your face. He would. And I go, and then he sent me to my room. Right. Or my mother would, she just get fed up with the whole situation. She'd say, boy, I don't like your attitude. You better go to your room till you learn how to act. So I'd be in my room, I'd get my act together, I'd step out into the hallway and I'd say, to be or not to be. I spent a lot of time in my room. Right? Because that's not what she was talking about in terms of attitude. And it wasn't until I was 17 that I got it. I was a late bloomer, but I got it, right? So my dad was my pastor. We went to church from 7:30 a.m. to 11:30 p.m. We stopped at 3 o'clock for chicken, not because we're black, but because chicken is delicious. So church all day on Sunday. So Friday night, I asked my dad for the car. My dad loves me, so what does he say? He says, yes, he loves me. So I get the car, I'm kicking it with my friends. That means hanging out. And with my friends, we're cruising for girls. I don't know what would have happened had we found girls, but we're cruising for girls. And I come home before curfew. I fill the car up with gas. I toss my dad the keys, and he says I have what kind of an attitude? A good attitude, a positive attitude. So Friday night, my dad and I are cool. Sunday, my best friend Dexter calls me at noon and says, Andre, can you pick me up for the movies? What do I know about Sunday? Church all day. But I'm 17. I'm invincible. And Jesus is my friend. So I go up to my dad and I say, Dad, can I borrow the car? And what does my dad say? Not only does he say no, but he gives me the hell sermon. In our household, the worst thing you could do would be to earn yourself a trip to hell. And either you could go to hell on your own, or my dad would show you the way. As a result of that conversation, my dad would say I had what kind of an attitude? A bad attitude. And what would I say about my dad's attitude? That it's also bad. So what is it that actually determines one's attitude? Because Friday night we were cool. Sunday, not so. What determines an attitude?
Where you wanted to go.
Where I wanted to go. the situation. Your goal determines your attitude. When students, in particular, I want you to think about a young person, or maybe it was even you. When you got what you wanted, what kind of attitude did you have? When you were denied or delayed something that you wanted, what was the attitude? So when we see a student who has a bad attitude, what do we know about them for sure? There's some goal that they're not achieving, right? And so our job then becomes twofold. What's the easiest way to help someone have a good attitude? What's that?
Help them succeed.
Help them succeed. Help them get what they want. But what if what they want isn't practical, isn't probable? And even if you could do it, you wouldn't, because it's not beneficial to them. What becomes your responsibility? To help them find a new goal, right? So these four truths, at least for me, have been very valuable in my teaching strategy, because now I can look at a kid and go, oh, I know what's going on with you. So when we talked about this idea that all human behaviors are goal-directed, I want to talk about what the goals are. And then I want to take a break. Can I have 3 minutes? And then we'll take a break. Just so I can finish this part, and then we'll move on to some other pieces. So here are the 3 goals that all human beings have. All human beings are looking for significance, belonging, and safety. They're looking for significance, belonging, and safety. Significance says that I am a person with purpose and power. I can do something. I'm a person with purpose and power. I have significance. I was not an accident. I was born on purpose. And that purpose is either something that God tells me or something that I decide. Purpose. Everyone can do something. Belonging says that I am in a network of people who understand and value my purpose. I'm connected with people who understand and value my purpose. Look at your friends. Do they understand and value your purpose? I would suggest that they probably do, which is why you're friends. And then lastly, safety is being physically, emotionally, and spiritually safe to do the previous 2 things. So being physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually safe to have relationships that understand your significance. And one of the things that we'll see is that when we have students who are either having issues or problems, or we want to help someone move from state A to state B, or we talk about this idea of educational equity, educational inequity limits people's significance, limits people's ability to connect with one another, to understand their significance, and limits their ability to be physically, emotionally, and spiritually safe to do those previous 2 things. So when we talk about this idea of educational equity, we're talking about making sure that everyone has access to their significance, their belonging, and their safety. I'll see you in 10 minutes. Let's take a break, and we'll come back. Thank you so much.
No, I noticed that too. I was like, oh, it's her hand. I thought that was a
Oh, that's cool.